It's an idea that you hear all the time, and that is that you got to write things down. If you want to achieve a goal, you got to write it down. If you want to change a habit, you got to write that down. If you want to get something done, you've got to write that down. I'm somebody that's a big believer in writing things down. And you've heard this from me if you've been watching any of my videos for any length of time. Write things down. It's the key, one of the keys to unlocking the achievement of a goal. And the question though comes up, and that is, are you doing it? Are you actually writing things down? Even though you hear it in all the books, all the videos, seminars, if you've been to any, are you actually doing it? And chances are you're not. Most people that I talk to, most people that I know don't write things down. And it's really not your fault, because what happens is that people will tell you that you need to do this, you need to write things down, and it's going to have this awesome effect, but they never give you really solid reasons why. How is writing things down going to really influence you and change what you do so that you can achieve a goal? And that's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to teach you a concept called mental proximity. How writing things down influences you because of having them at the forefront of your mind, and how having them right here, that you think about them, remember them on a constant basis, affects you. That's mental proximity. And how it affects you in three ways: your decisions, your perception of the world around you, and also what you value, what you're motivated to do. And I'm going to use this apple, this Fuji apple, as a teaching tool to explain to you how mental proximity works and how writing things down gives you mental proximity and influences what you do. So to begin, I'd like you to think about this apple, and I'd like you to think about it hanging off the top of your head somehow. Okay, so you have, let's say you have this funny hat, and off that hat you have this apple hanging right there. And with that apple hanging right there 24/7, except maybe you can take it off when you sleep, that'd be okay. But when you wake up, you put it right back there. And so you have this apple hanging there. How is having an apple, this apple hanging from your head where you can see it in front of your vision, in your mind, 24/7, how is it going to impact you? How is that going to change and influence your actions? Well, let's talk about that. So imagine this is hanging there and it has mental proximity. So you're looking at it constantly. You're being reminded that it's there constantly because it's hanging right there. Well, the first way that this is going to change you is your decisions. So imagine you get hungry and you feel your stomach grumbling and you're thinking, I've got to get something to eat, or I'm hungry, I want to eat something. What's going to be the first thing that kind of pops into your brain? Perhaps, hopefully, if this apple is hanging off the top of your head, from the top of your head, and you get hungry. Well, you're probably going to think, well, I want an apple, or I want a piece of fruit, or I want something crunchy, or I want something that's red to eat, whatever that may be, strawberries, bananas. But do you think your decision about what to eat would be influenced by having this right here as opposed to if it hadn't been right there? Yes, because the apple has mental proximity. It's going to start affecting your choices and your decisions. That's just one way when you get hungry, but it's going to have an influence on a lot of different decisions that you make throughout your day if it's hanging there constantly. So decision making is influenced when you give something mental proximity. The second way that mental proximity influences you and affects you is your perception of the world around you. And this is often called your reticular activating system. That's what the filter is inside your brain that kind of determines what you see in the world around you. And so if you have this apple, again, mental proximity, you give this apple and it's hanging from the top of your head right there, how is that going to change your perception and the things that you pay attention to in the world around you? Well, if this thing's hanging right there, you're probably going to start noticing apples a lot more. You're going to start noticing roundish objects a lot more, red things a lot more, maybe fruit more. You might start noticing knives that you can cut up fruit with. You might start noticing recipes that you can use to make fruit recipes. And these are all things that were probably in your environment before, but because this thing's hanging right there and it's kind of determining what you're paying attention to, you're going to start seeing things related to this a lot more often because it has mental proximity. It's hanging right there. So your perception of the world changes when you give something mental proximity. Now, a third way that mental proximity changes your influences what you do is that it kind of changes what you value. And what I mean by that is that if this thing were hanging right here all the time, there would come a point in time, or many points in time, where you would maybe get curious about apples, where they're grown, how many different types of apples there are, what can you do with apples, how are apples used to improve people's health, where did apples originally grow? You have all these curiosities about this thing that's right there, and you start finding answers to those questions. And as a result of gaining knowledge about apples, where they're grown, what you can do with them, all these different things about apples, you start to value the apple a lot more, because it's been proven that the more knowledge you have about something and the more curiosity that you fulfill about a topic that's on your mind, the more you value that thing. And so when you value something, you tend to do something with it. The more you know about it, the more you can understand it, the more you start to do something with it, and the more it influences your actions and behaviors. Just think about the people that you know in your life. The people that you know really, really well in your life, you have a lot of knowledge about, and you understand them really well, they have a greater influence on you than anybody else. That's because the more you know about something or someone, the more you understand them, the greater influence they have on you. And that's the same thing that giving something mental proximity will affect you. One way that it will affect you. So how do you use this? Well, you use this by giving things that you want to influence your life and have an impact in your life and that you want to achieve, giving them mental proximity, putting them right there so that you see them in your mind's eye on a consistent basis, so they start influencing your decisions, your perception of the world around you, and what you value. And you combine all those things and you're going to achieve those things in your life. That's just the way it works. And so you have goals, you have habits that you want to change, there are things that you want to achieve, significant things that you want to achieve. You've got to write these down. Get a piece of paper, not on your computer, write them down in your handwriting, long form or cursive. Write it down and review that several times a day, at least 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And when you do that, you give that thing, whatever you write down, because you've written it down and you're reviewing it, you give it mental proximity, and it starts changing and influencing what you do. Speaking of writing things down, get a piece of paper or a journal if you have one, and write this down, okay? And this is the takeaway from this lesson. And that is, when I write down and consistently review what's important, it affects my decisions, what I notice, and what I value. So give things of significance to you mental proximity.